Why hello there everyone. Yes, I finally beat the game Hades with the heat gauge cranked up all the way to 40. This is a new record for me, a new personal record. My previous best was 32. If you're wondering why I haven't uploaded a Hades video in a while, it's because I've been busy working towards this win on 40 heat. It definitely would not have taken me this long to beat it if I had started my attempts with the Pact of Punishment spread that I'm using here, but what's a video game without some trial and error? If you want to look at the Pact of Punishment spread that I use, it was at the start of the video there, and you can go back and pause it if you want to copy it and use it for yourself, because that's what I would recommend if you were trying to beat 40 heat yourself. But obviously, you can do multiple different compositions, so some people are probably better with some than others. Anyways, I start with the cluster bomb on Asphodel, which is very, very good. I don't want to say necessary because it's obviously not, but it sort of feels like it once I get used to having it. Took the Chaos Boon there just because it's early, so you always go as high risk as possible when it's super early, and then you start getting less and less risky as the run progresses. And in most of these cases, like the other voiceover videos, the gameplay will pretty much speak for itself, but whenever I start making some questionable decisions, I will try to explain my reasoning. And I am recording this voiceover a day after I did this win, so I'm curious to see how much of this I even remember. What's funny is that on the day I beat this, which was yesterday at the time of recording, this was actually my first run of the night. So I really was not expecting to get it here because I've been trying to get this win on 40 heat for a couple weeks, right? So I was really not expecting this to turn into a win. I was expecting it to be a warm-up run. But the seed ended up being very good. I pretty much got every single thing I would want, so that obviously helps. But obviously, it's not just luck, because you have to have the determination to actually do it over and over again until you get a lucky run. Quotations around lucky. It's good to stock up on keys there to get as many rerolls as possible early, and I'm going to go ahead and get the Zeus Boon here, which is showing up because of my keepsake that I took. So I want to get the Zeus attack on Asphodel as my first boon. And then hopefully jolt it after that. Well, I did say that this seed was really good and that I got a bunch of boons I wanted, right? But actually, don't want to spoil it or anything, but I actually get the worst possible RNG for something later, which you will see. You've probably already figured out it's the Sack RNG, so what's really nice is that I get offered an epic attack from Zeus. I was willing to use as many rerolls as necessary there to get it, just because I would restart the run if I didn't get the Zeus attack there, but I did get it offered immediately, which was really nice. Now I get to save my rolls for other things, notably Athena, for when I want the Athena dash or the sure footing. I consider sure footing just as, if not more necessary than the Athena dash when the heat is this high, because heightened security is such a menace. Even in the Hades fight, so between the lava in Asphodel and the urns in the Hades fight, with heightened security on, each one of those things does so much damage, but with sure footing, it really alleviates that very well. So I get offered Athena natural here. Normally I would have switched to the Athena keepsake in Asphodel, and I think I still do on this run, but I got offered Athena natural here, and I use a reroll for either a dash or sure footing. And I get the dash here after one reroll, which is pretty nice. So I still have 4 rerolls left after getting the Zeus attack and Athena dash. So that's much more extra dice than what I'm used to. But back to sure footing. Something else that's really nice about sure footing is that it scales extremely hard with rarity. And so an epic sure footing decreases damage from traps by 90%, and I'm pretty sure that gets calculated after heightened security. So it pretty much erases that Pact of Punishment. In fact, it's a little strange because with that Pact of Punishment, it makes trap damage and lava and the urns that show up in the Hades fight super detrimental if you get hit by it. And so you would pretty much rather get hit by anything else but those. But with sure footing, specifically in epic rarity sure footing, which decreases damage taken from traps by 90%, it makes it not nearly as significant as anything else, and you'd actually rather get hit by a trap than an enemy, which sort of inverses what you would normally prioritize avoiding. So dealing with all these projectiles in Tartarus here is not that much of an issue since I already have the Athena dash. Probably would not have been much of an issue either way, but knowing that I have the Athena dash already, I can just dash into these projectiles here without much problem. So that Zeus and Athena is super tempting. Even though I have enough money for the shop, I take that anyway just because that's way too juicy. So I don't think I'm concerned about the time, so I take Zeus first. Having to fight Athena is easier than fighting Zeus, but it takes longer, so that's the trade-off. I use one reroll here and get an epic jolted, which again is very, very good.
I'm disappointed you would spurn me like this, cousin. She won't like this.
And I also figured that even though fighting Athena would take longer than fighting Zeus, because it is so early in the run in Tartarus, the enemies shouldn't be that beefy, and so I should be able to eliminate most of them before they even get a shield. So some of them still do get the shield though, as you can see, but if some of them have the shield, I just prioritize the other ones. I'm never just sitting around waiting. These rooms are pretty grueling with jury summons maxed out, though. By these rooms, I mean the rooms with 2 boons. I think I use the rest of my rerolls here, but don't get anything particularly good. So, yes, I use the last 2 dice here, hoping for sure footing. After some thinking, after some deliberation. So even though Deathless Stand is the best thing out of those 2 things offered there, I actually don't get that boon because I'd rather save the boons that refill a Death Defiance for if I need that Death Defiance later. Because if I took that boon now, it wouldn't get offered again. Unless I sell it, I think. But who knows if I would ever get the ability to sell it. But if I were to take that boon, so long as I had that boon, at least so long as I had that boon, it wouldn't get offered again, and it, like I said, I have full Death Defiances right now, so I'd rather save that boon by keeping it in the possible pool of things offered for later. Which is why I took the boon there that wasn't as good. Something I get here is something I usually always want, and that's the Doom Special on Eris Rail. Just one Doom boon from Ares can go a really long way. You don't even have to buff it up that much. I actually think that builds specifically revolving around Doom have really hard diminishing returns, so just getting Doom on special is really nice. Get a rare fishy here. I think the trick behind getting rare fishes, it might be just a superstition, but I think the trick is to pull it up as soon as it shakes, but it's not reactable, so the only way to do it is to, it's called a bob, right? I used to fish a lot, but I haven't fished in a long time. I get the Athena here hoping for sure footing again, and then I avoid Deathless Stand for the same reason here as I did earlier. But if the thing on the water bobs 3 times, then you know that the 4th one has to be the fish. So as soon as you see any movement, that's when you pull the line out. It seems that whenever I do that, I have a really high chance of getting a rare fish. I think the only times I've gotten a rare fish was from doing that. And I get Electo here. This is definitely not my best Electo fight, but in my defense, I've found that it's extremely hard to develop a consistent strategy in beating Electo. She's definitely the hardest Fury. Tisiphone is definitely the easiest because with Thanatos, you can pretty much skip her entire last phase, because in Tisiphone's last phase, she makes the room so small that if you summon Thanatos, it's really impossible to miss her with it. And it nukes the rest of her HP, so if you get Tisiphone and you have Thanatos, you pretty much save an extra 30 seconds, potentially. Sell that. Eye of Lamia is pretty good in terms of cost for health gained. So I went ahead and got Eye of Lamia to stay healthy. And now I'm switching to the Athena keepsake, like I mentioned earlier, just so that way I can get sure footing, hopefully before the boss fight in Asphodel. Because also, like I said earlier, lava counts as trap damage. And so if you don't have sure footing in the Asphodel boss fight, it honestly feels like the lava is just as much a boss as the actual boss itself, if not more. So these enemies here that jump around a lot seem to be sort of hard to catch with your special as Eris Rail. So instead of clumping up the cluster bomb really closely, I try to just spread it out and cover as much of the map as possible, so that way wherever they jump, there's a high chance of them jumping in it. But then here with these slow-moving enemies, I can pretty much crowd control them pretty easily. So the one thing I'd always want the most from Hermes is extra dashes, but I don't get that offered at all during this run. So I take the side hustle, which is obviously better if you can get it earlier. And I somehow passed up a hero on the ground. Did you see that? Maybe Zagreus just wasn't hungry after eating that first one. Let's just say it was a flex. Who needs food? This room is so big, sometimes it takes me a long time to clear it. Especially because there's no fast way to get from the upper level to the lower level if you're not already near a staircase. Also, you can't see all of the room exits in the same shot. You have to actually walk to see all of them. Okay, so here, look at this. Divine Protection, Athena's legendary boon. Keep in mind, I have over 100 hours in this game, and I have never been offered this once. So, obviously, I have to take that. And that is very significant. See, I had to dash over to see the other room option. I think I go for the money, because I don't have at least 270 gold right now, and it's best to always have at least 270 gold, so that way, if you ever get offered a shop, you have the option to go in there and buy a boon, because boons with convenience fee on max will be 270 if you can see what they are. Sometimes, though, you'll get a random boon, which it costs 225, but that's not very often, so typically you want to make sure you're always sitting on at least 270 gold, so that way if you're offered a shop and you don't want to take its alternative, you can buy something when you're going through there, so it's not just a waste. Although you still save time by going through the shop, so sometimes you still want to, but if you do, you want to make sure you can buy something. So here, this is probably one of the toughest decisions of the run. I already have Epic Zeus Attack and Epic Zeus Jolted for the lightning. Those are... So Jolted is the main thing I would want after getting the Zeus Attack, right? The next thing I would want is Double Strike, but Double Strike seems to not get offered very frequently at all, and I don't have any more rerolls left, so the chance of me getting that at Zeus is very low. Also, it is a boss room. And also, the other option is a shop. And like I was just mentioning, I have over 270 gold here. And so the reason why I end up going for the shop here is to make up the time I had lost in Tartarus for taking that double boon room over the shop, I think it was. Look at that, as soon as I say that, it's not frequent to get those random boons. So, this is sort of a tough decision as well, because taking Fudge Shop will count towards Family Favorite. I don't think taking Sunken Treasure counts towards Family Favorite, because if you take Sunken Treasure, I don't think you get to keep it. I'm actually not sure about that. I might need to check that again. But anyways, also, if I take Fudge Shot, the main thing I'm thinking about is if I take Fudge Shot and I find Zeus or Poseidon again later, I can get offered Sea Storm. But the reason I decide that it's not worth it is because Sea Storm is only really worth it if you have Poseidon on either your special or your dash or even your call. But if the only thing I have that can make use of Sea Storm is my cast, then it's not really worth it, because I doubt that would be doing more DPS than my attack and special anyway. And I missed that golden urn. Let's just say I was flexing there as well, saying I don't need it. Watch how clean this is. Perfect timing. This is definitely the scariest mid-boss you can get in Asphodel, at least given my track record with it. But I got to pull off that Thanatos perfectly against them, and that didn't take very long at all. I take the Storm Lightning here, which is epic, but that has some pretty hard diminishing returns. Even though it is nice, but Double Strike is much better than the extra bounces. It's been a very long time since I've been offered Double Strike, and also that boon which increases the AoE of the lightning bolts. It's been so long since I've gotten it, I don't even remember the name. For some reason, I take a lot of stupid damage in this room. Maybe just because the room is so big, but also, I think that these projectiles that curve are really nasty, even if you have the Athena dash. Oof. 22 damage each. Yeah, watching my gameplay here, I don't really know why I was getting hit so much. And even in the moment, I didn't know why I was getting hit so much. So, I took the palm here hoping, you know, I could upgrade something significant. But both of those options were really bad, so I just took one. I put the palm on the thing I was more likely to sell, so that way I could get more money for it. Because either way, it would be an insignificant buff. So here it is room 33, so I know that if I take either the heart or the Hermes boon here, it's a free heart or boon. And I don't have enough money to buy a boon at the shop, which is why I skipped the shop. And I take Hermes here instead of the Centaur heart, because once again, I hope for the extra dash, but I don't get it. But it's fine, because I think I have to wind up selling this boon later anyway. Extra dashes are super significant, though. It seems that Hermes shows up much more frequently in Asphodel than anywhere else. So typically, if you don't get the extra dashes in Asphodel, it's unlikely you're going to get it after that. Of course, it is possible. It's just that after playing the game for a while, I've noticed that Hermes seems to always show up pretty frequently in Asphodel. He seems to always show up at least once or twice in Asphodel. So I'm doing a lot of damage here. I'm definitely not worried about the damage, but like I said, I would normally really want sure footing here, and I don't get it, which makes maneuvering around here really scary. That Thanatos call wasn't good either, and Lurny, the main lure he had in the middle, was just in a really good spot. Bad for me, and takes out a Death Defiance here, which is really lame, because I've had some really, really good Lurny fights. This is definitely not my best. But just not having sure footing sort of zones you in very specific spots, and if that main Lurny head is there, his hitbox on that shockwave is so good it hit me. And also, like I was saying, the Thanatos did not show up in a good spot. Normally when I use Thanatos there, it locks on to one of the heads above, like in the top part of the screen, and it usually is able to hit more than one that way.
Could use the extra coin.
Okay, so Hydrovite and Cyclops Jerky are both things that are extremely good if you take Charon's Hourglass. So right here, I'm considering if I should do that instead of taking Acorn, because typically, as of late, I've been taking Acorn, so that way I get that extra protection against the Theseus Minotaur boss fight here. But because these two items are being offered, I go ahead, make the gamble by taking Charon's Hourglass and buying those two items, because those are both very significant. Those are going to keep me healthy and keep me doing extra damage throughout Elysium, and give me just a much safer Elysium, with the trade-off being a much scarier boss fight at the end. So I take the hammer here, obviously, and I think this might be where I get the rocket bomb to combo with the cluster bomb to give me one of the most OP combinations in the game, which is cluster rockets. But not only is it one of the most OP combinations in the game, but it's also very fun, and it forces you to change the way you play, because with the cluster rockets, you have to really dash in close and shoot things at point blank so all the rockets will hit. So it's definitely not without its own costs in a way, but obviously very worth it. But also, one of the reasons why Charon's Hourglass is so good is that when I get out of Elysium, I can buy something in the pool of Charon, in the little transitory area in between Elysium and the Temple of Styx. I can buy something in that pool, in the rest area, and then switch to Acorn for the Hades fight, as I typically do. And even if you take off the Hourglass, you keep the buffs that it gave to your items that you bought. The Hourglass affects the items at the time of purchase, and if you get good enough RNG in the Temple of Styx, and that it only takes you 2 rooms to find the Satyr Sack, you can actually potentially take some of those buffs into the Hades fight. So you're technically being benefited from 2 keepsakes at the same time. Even though the Ares Athena is very tempting, there's nothing really else I need from Ares since I already have the Doom special. And Elysium rooms are scary anyway, so I just go ahead and take the room with Athena. If that Ares Athena room was the only room offered with Athena, then I probably would have taken it, but Athena is the one I'm more concerned about, which is why I just go in here. Because I'm still after that sure footing. And also, at this point, I am down a Death Defiant. So I will take either sure footing or... That did a lot of damage. I would take either sure footing here or a boon which refills a Death Defiance. Something I'd have to consider, though, is that if I take the boon, assuming I'm offered it, if I take a boon that refills a Death Defiance here, which I'm not, so I don't have to worry about it, so I just take sure footing here. The sure footing isn't that high of a rarity, so it's only plus 60% damage reduction, so the traps still deal a significant amount of damage, but it's also still significantly lowered. So here, no matter which door I choose, I have to fight a boss, so I just have to hope it's not the Minotaur, and it is, so I have to deal with that. This is the thing I try to avoid the most. I always avoid boss doors as a rule of thumb in Elysium, because this Minotaur fight is really scary. Especially if you don't have extra dashes. Look how close this spin attack is to hitting me all the time. The Butterfly Ballroom you can take up pretty quickly, especially with Thanatos. So it's usually just a 50-50 gamble, hoping that you don't get the Minotaur. But I take care of him just fine here. Anyways, though, back to what I was saying about the potential Athena boom, which could refill a Death Defiance here. If I were to take that here, and then I get Patroclus, I would sort of regret taking that boom, because if I'm reaching Patroclus, I can have him refill all my Death Defiances anyway, and then in that case, it means I should have taken a different boon from Athena. So like, for example, if I were offered sure footing and a Death Defiance boon at the same time, I would have to consider that. But as you saw, sure footing was the only one offered I would even consider wanting, so I took that. And you can see those cluster rockets with Doom were very helpful there. I get another Zeus. So here I take the Call, which is obviously much better than the Vengeance, but the only reason I considered taking Vengeance was because I was thinking I might have to sell one of these, in which case the Epic Heaven's Vengeance would give me more money. Also, Heaven's Vengeance isn't that bad, but I also wondered, okay, it says if you take damage, right? If I get hit by an enemy, but I don't take damage because of the Divine Protection, I don't think it would proc. Maybe it would, but I would assume it doesn't proc, and so taking a revenge boon with divine protection would be some anti-synergy, because the build I have going on right now is pretty much to not take damage. Plus, I like to make sure I always get at least a call by the end. And so, even though I would like an epic rarity call, the rare Zeus call is still pretty enticing because the lightning bolts from the Zeus call will be buffed by the epic jolted I have, the one that I got really early. So this is the call that I think stays with me for the rest of the run. Cluster rockets are so fun. I think this gameplay speaks for itself.
Good enough.
What do I take here? Oh, I take the pomegranate definitely on the chance that I can upgrade my sure footing. Because like I said, I only got a common rarity sure footing and it scales really hard with rarity and levels. So, I take more than one pomegranate hoping that I get to upgrade sure footing, but I don't think I ever do. But it obviously turns out fine because I won the run. I wouldn't be posting this if I didn't. This is a pretty advantageous Thanatos room for me because all these enemies are pretty low health. And obviously in the Thanatos rooms, it's quantity over quality. So I'm beating him by quite a lot. So I don't really need to go too try hard here. I'm just trying to stay safe. All these extra lightning bounces is really nice about getting rid of those shields to open them up for the cluster rockets. So I upgrade the special here, which is actually still pretty good. Especially considering I'm able to apply Doom with those cluster rockets. So that's still pretty decent, even though I wanted sure footing. So here's the Patroclus offer, which I obviously take because I'm down a Death Defiance. I'm pretty impressed by how healthy I stay throughout this whole Elysium.
One of these and then just leave me be, stranger.
But that's because of that item I bought with the Charon's Hourglass. So there's the shop and the heart, and I have enough money for the shop, so I just go in there. Buy the Poseidon boon.
Cheers, mate.
I take Hydraulic Might here because Sunken Treasure wouldn't have as much value here as it normally would, just because I'm full health, and so that means I wouldn't be getting any benefit from the health that Sunken Treasure could give me. So I take Hydraulic Might, even though it's not particularly useful.
Delicious.
At this point, at least. The reason I upgrade Hydraulic Might is because the same reason I upgraded something earlier in this run. I upgrade it because this is something I'm likely to sell, and Storm Lightning, having those 2 extra lightning bounces sounds significant, but it's really not. And so I'd rather upgrade something I am likely to sell, so that way I at least get the extra money for it when selling it. So here is the Theseus fight with no Acorn. So here I'm having to pay the price for staying so healthy throughout Elysium. Honestly, I think that this boss fight is actually tougher than Hades if Hades isn't on Extreme Measures 4. Extreme Measures 4 Hades makes it a very long stamina match, but Hades Phase 1 and 2 I don't think is as hard as the Theseus-Asterius fight. The hardest thing to avoid in the whole game is if you crank Forced Overtime up to max. That bull rush, that tackle that the Minotaur does is absolutely crazy fast. He runs at Mach 5, so that's one of the reasons I don't have Forced Overtime cranked up all the way, is because of this Minotaur fight specifically turns into a nightmare. So even though I'm pretty hurt by now, I was able to take out the Minotaur pretty quickly because of all the damage these Doom Cluster Rockets are doing. Also, I wonder, maybe I should pay attention when I'm in the Hades fight, but I wonder if you have Acorn and Divine Protection active, which one would get consumed if you were to get hit by a boss. And I wrap this up. Now. So I have 4 minutes, 45 seconds to spare, which is actually pretty good spare time. You will see, as I foreshadowed earlier, I get the worst possible RNG in the Temple of Styx, in that I have to go through every single room before I find the Satyr Sack. And yet I still somehow don't run out of time, because my build is good enough and I'm making use of it well enough. So, unfortunately, even though I have the Charon's Hourglass here, there's nothing here offered that would get a benefit from Charon's Hourglass, so I don't buy anything there, even though that would have been nice, because then I could have carried that potentially into the Hades fight. So I switched to Acorn here. There was no deep thinking here. The only reason why I paused here, I think, was because I was drying off my hands on a towel to keep them from getting too sweaty. So I take the Acorn.
One more stop.
And make sure I get all the money pots going into the Temple of Styx. So I immediately see that there is a pretty cheap Athena boon down there. I purposefully keep that in mind to... I know I want to buy it before the Hades fight, but I specifically don't want to buy it until either I'm going into the Hades fight or after I lose a Death Defiance, because I have a pretty good chance of being offered a Death Defiance refill from Athena, and so I want to save that until I need it. But for now, I just buy the pomegranate, because I know that even in buying the pomegranate, I should have enough money to buy the Athena later, should I need it. So... I think I take Ares here. The reason I take Ares instead of Athena, well, I'm saving Athena for the same reason I'm saving the Athena in the shop. So that way, if I do happen to lose a Death Defiance in the Temple of Styx here, I should have 2 chances to get a Death Defiance refill from Athena. But the reason I take Ares here is because Ares still has a few boons that could be of significant benefit to me. But more importantly is that this is a room with a boss, and it's actually impossible to get the Satyr Sack after 1 room. You have to at least do 2. And so I know I'm going to have to fight the boss at the end of this hallway, at the end of this series of rooms. And the reason I prefer having to fight a mid-boss here over having a regular room is because I still have 3 charges of Thanatos. And so I can nuke a mid-boss pretty easily, at least relative to a big open room full of lots of enemies that would be hard to hit with Thanatos, because obviously Thanatos is good at doing high single target damage on slow-moving enemies. The reason I sell Side Hustle there is because it's about time to sell it, because the whole point of Side Hustle is to make money, and at this point, I could probably get more money from it from selling it, since there won't be too many more rooms, or at least, statistically speaking, it's unlikely that I have to go through many more rooms. I actually have no idea what killed me there. So now, because I lost a Death Defiance, I will be looking for getting one from Athena. Also, I took a lot of damage there. I was starting to get really worried that I was throwing. It felt like I had potentially thrown the run there, so I'm glad I did not. Dire Misfortune is very good. When it says that the Doom does more damage when stacked multiple times, I would assume that the cluster rockets that the Doom applied from cluster rockets would utilize that. Okay, so there it is. See, I knew there was a high chance I could get offered that, so I buy the Athena boon and get the Death Defiance refill, just like I was buying it for. So now, the reason I take Athena here is that I'm low health, and so I think that it's not too unlikely that I die in one of these rooms again. And so if I do happen to die here on the way to getting this Athena boon, I could potentially get offered the other boon, which offers you a Death Defiance refill. But also, I know that at this point, it's pretty likely that whatever room I go into will be the Satyr Sack. But obviously, little do I know at this point that the RNG is not on my side here. This room's kind of awkward when you're in this spot on the right. There's no way to easily get over to the other side without getting shot from enemies with projectiles like that. See, I know that each one of those rockets can apply a stack of doom. So if you shoot an enemy point blank with those cluster rockets and have each rocket apply a stack of doom, I would assume that that benefits from dire misfortune. Stay in the circle, and it did. So like I said, I can nuke these big single targets pretty easily with Thanatos, as I'm demonstrating here. This is much more easy to manage than a big room full of lots of enemies. The reason why I think that there might be a chance that it doesn't benefit from dire misfortune is because you're potentially applying all the doom stacks at the same time, and then it's not successive. So there I got another good boon from Athena. The boon I picked up is good at stopping dot damage, damage over time damage, so like poison, Hades lasers. It's actually a very good one. So Athena, definitely the MVP for this run, I would say. So now I'm considering either Poseidon, because Poseidon still has maybe some boons, but the reason I take the pomegranate is because, once again, I am hoping for a potential sure footing upgrade before the Hades fight, so that way I don't have to be too scared of those urns. It's so satisfying taking out all these rats when it's just a room of regular-sized rats. Especially with all those lightning bounces and cluster rockets. It was actually pretty close. I'm obviously trying to do these rooms as quickly as possible, so I can have as much time as possible when doing the Hades fight. So at this point, I'm feeling a little bit worried about the time, because at this point, I've realized that I'm getting unlucky when it comes to this Sack RNG. And this room is really scary, too. So many spots you can get poisoned. It's really hard to stay behind cover here. You still have to worry about those buzzsaws. Also, maybe I should have mentioned earlier, the reason why I've been so trigger happy with this Thanatos summon is because I've yet to unlock the ability to use a summon against the Hades fight. I know that you eventually unlock it, but I don't know how. Maybe you need the epilogue ending. I just upgrade Jolted there, which is pretty significant, even though I was wanting sure footing. So now I take the money so I could potentially buy one of those things down there. I think that's why. I mean, why else would I be taking money at this point? But, I know there is a way you can... I know at some point you can unlock the ability to use your companion summons against Hades. But, as of right now, when I was playing this run, I've yet to unlock that ability. And I think you might have to beat the epilogue. Even though I have over 100 hours in this game, I'm still trying to unlock the epilogue ending. I know that me spending a few weeks grinding these 40 heat attempts sort of put a halt on any significant progress when it comes to the story or any kind of upgrades. And so now that I've beaten 40 heat, I'm probably going to go back to just doing 32 heat or 20 heat runs. So that way it's still a nice challenge, but also I'm able to actually get wins frequently. And so that way I can go back to a more streamlined progression in the game, so I can get that epilogue ending. It would be weird to have played a game for over 100 hours and not gotten the true ending, right? I just use Thanatos here because it's a little bit of desperation, but also I'm just really worried about the time. Obviously, Thanatos is the highest risk, highest reward summon, so you're going to hit some, you're not going to hit some. Upgrade the Zeus's aid there. So that pomegranate is the thing I was hoping to afford with the money, which I obviously did. So now, I have to take the final option. So I know that the Satyr Sack has to at least be behind there. The reason I opened that was because I was so hasty. I was mashing E so fast to open this door because I'm trying to get the heck out of here. So I just accidentally hit the... I somehow accidentally hit the button to open the codex when I was mashing E. So let that be reflective of how pressured I am right now in terms of the time. Whoa, what a surprise! We finally found it. So I get the boiling point here, which is actually better than what I was expecting to get. Not that I was just expecting anything in particular, but when I thought of Poseidon boons and I listed some off in my head, that was not one I accounted for. So that actually is one of the better things I could get from Poseidon at this point. So now I'm just going straight into the Hades fight. So here's the finale to the 40 heat clear. This video would have been a lot shorter if I had gotten 2 or 3 sack. But, in this way, we just get more epic gameplay content, right?
Catch your breath if necessary, and then let us see if you shall earn your bonus for this day.
So I'm drying my hands off at this point. You're going to see me randomly pause throughout this fight, too. That's me drying my hands off on a towel just because I need to keep my gaming ability in tip-top shape. So I try to dash in and get rid of his shields immediately. And then obviously, for me to be dealing decent damage here, I need to dash in at point blank to land an attack with the rockets. But it's obviously pretty scary because without extra dashes, if I get in that close, it'll be very hard for me to get out in time. And so I just have to time my dashes extremely well. Or just go in and get out. At times I know he won't be counterattacking. So the fact that an Athena dash is a deflect and that doesn't use up an acorn, I would imagine that Divine Protection acts in the same way. So I think Divine Protection would get used up before the acorn absorption. Because I think acorn only procs if you are taking damage. Or would take damage otherwise. The Phase 1 Hades fight is definitely harder than the Phase 2 Hades fight just because of how chaotic it is. I usually always end up using all of my acorn shields in Phase 1, which makes me kind of worried because I think, oh no, if I'm getting hit this much, this early, how's the rest of the fight going to go? But then Phase 2 is always so much more smooth, always so much more calm, because there's so much less chaos on the screen. It's also really inconsistent in Phase 1 too, because who knows what he's going to summon. Sometimes the things he summons are just way worse than other things he could have summoned. Sometimes he can just summon a really bad comp. So here I pause in between phases to dry off my hands, like I was mentioning. And obviously, because at the start of Phase 2, he's going to emit a shockwave, I try to start at a sort of a medium distance.
Let's finish this.
I shot that to keep the Ares rail buff on myself. So I try to dash in and land those cluster rockets immediately. I was too far away to try to get behind him here, so I just hide behind that. I love the soundtrack for Phase 2. That was an extremely well-timed call, by the way, since I was about to dash into that urn. Too bad I can't really stay close enough to him long enough to make use of that call. That's why I tried to get in behind him when he was doing that laser, which paid off. His healing isn't very significant because if he's healing, I'm able to outdamage a lot of that. I could have dashed in to get on him when he was doing that radial laser, but I decided to go for the safer bet of hiding behind that wall, but then I got hit by the urn anyway, which is still doing significant amount of damage since I never got to upgrade sure footing. But I still have sure footing, so I'm not going to trash talk it. And that hit me too, so sure footing did decrease the amount of damage I took there, but obviously that's also another thing that made me want the upgrade for it. So I have the other greater call ready, which I use here, even though he was right about to go to Phase 3, so in hindsight, it probably would have been safer Not safer. It probably would have been better, just smarter to save that greater call for phase 3 here. But I just did it so I could get to phase 3 as quickly as possible. So I still have 2 Death Defiances here, so I realize that there's a pretty decent chance I can win. This vision obscurity you get in Extreme Measures 4 in phase 3 here is so hampering. The lack of visibility coupled with all these urns that keep on spawning makes this phase 3 really dangerous. So I don't even have him down to half HP yet, and I lost one of my 2 Death Defiances, so I realize I need to up my game here for this last bit. I'm trying to break as many urns as possible, so that way if I have to hide behind one of these pillars, I'm not going to be standing on an urn. But it's kind of hard to manage, considering they keep popping up. So I have the Greater Call ready here. Pausing to get ready, drawing off my hands. And I still have 2 minutes, so even though I had to go through all those rooms, I realized that time isn't the issue at this point. So this is actually really close. I have no more Death Defiances left. Just a couple hits could probably kill me here. And he's healing. And there we go. So there's my first clear on 40 heat. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you are currently trying to beat 40 heat or just another high heat yourself, I hope you found this motivational or at least helpful. If you have any kind of questions, let me know. So I have over 100 hours in the game now, so I feel pretty knowledgeable about certain things, but there's a lot of stuff in this game, so there's also still a lot of stuff I don't know. So if there's something I missed or something I didn't say correctly in here, please point it out and let me know, because I would like to be correct when it comes to anything like that. So here I'm sort of looking at the stuff that was the most significant. So obviously, you know, the epic Zeus attack and epic Zeus jolt damage, getting that pretty early was really helpful. But then Divine Protection, I have to give that the spotlight, because this was the first time I ever got Divine Protection. And then even though Sure Footing was common, that's still a big deal, because I did get hit by several traps and stuff like that. So it actually did, even though it was only common, it really did absorb a lot of potential damage. And then, of course, how could we forget about the cluster rockets, which is just too fun. I already have another video on the channel themed around the cluster rockets. But obviously this time the cluster rockets by themselves were not the only thing that aided me through here. I don't know why the Hades spear or the Hades bident is floating there. I couldn't remember if it normally floats like that after beating him, but it was in the water because that's where he threw it. I guess if you finish him off when he has it thrown, it just stays out. I had just been grinding 40 heat runs back to back without doing any other heat level in between. So this was actually the first win I got in a while. So it had actually been a long time since I had seen the ending cutscene, one of those ending cutscenes you get after beating Hades. But anyways, like I said, I will probably be back to doing 32 and 20 heat runs now. So that way I can just start pumping out more wins, because I got so many cool and unique and interesting builds during all of these 40 heat attempts. But because I was doing it on a 40 heat run, I ended up dying, and then I could never show you guys those builds because I don't want to upload a run unless I got a win, right? I wouldn't want to pull a bait and switch like that. I only want to show a run if I got a win. And so it was sort of a shame each time I lost after getting a unique build, because it made me think, wow, if I had been doing that run on 32 heat, I definitely could have won that, and then I could have gotten a nice 32 heat video with a cool unique build to upload to YouTube. But that was just one of the sacrifices necessary in playing the game enough to be good enough to beat 40 heat. So I'm very proud of myself for getting that. So like I said, if you're trying to beat a high heat, if you have a certain personal goal in mind as well, I hope you get it. Now, to up the ante, I'm going to have to do 50 heat, but after all these 40 heat attempts, I'm probably not going to skip straight to 50 heat. That'll be more of a long-term goal. So I might do 50 heat later after doing some more 20 and 32 heat runs. If I start getting bored of that, I'm going to have to go do 50 heat to up the ante. So look forward to that sometime in the future. And if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to. And thanks for watching. I will see you all later.